Let's move on to another story. You recently wrote for The Nation about a new study about how companies, actually it's been found that companies make women less ambitious over time. It's a really interesting study. Tell us about it.
Yeah, there's this idea, I think, a lot that women are just less ambitious than men, that the reason there's a pay gap, that the reason there are so few women CEOs, for example, is because women are just not as interested in climbing higher, that they are interested instead in staying home and raising children, or just aren't as competitive. The social science really just doesn't line up with that, and the latest example was a massive study that came out conducted by Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg's organization, and McKinsey, surveyed many thousands of people, hundreds of businesses, and what it found is that equal numbers of men and women want to be promoted, particularly at the entry level. They have the same ambition to reach the highest level of their organizations, and this is true in other studies as well. The challenge is that ambition that they start out with when they first get into the workplace diminishes over time, whereas men stays pretty steady. There was a Bain study earlier that showed that it takes just 2 years for women's ambition to fall dramatically, by 60%, whereas men just continue feeling just as ambitious as when they first got into the workplace. What this really points to is that it's not that women are less ambitious by nature. It's that you get into the workplace and you start to see structural sexism. You start to see that your ideas don't go as far as your male colleagues, or your pay doesn't seem to match up, or you're not given the prime assignments or the opportunities to move up, and no matter how hard you're working, no matter what you're doing. And it starts to grind them down, and it makes them less ambitious because, there's only so far you can lean in when you're hitting your head up against the wall.
Let's dig in a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned structural sexism and a couple kind of examples, but let just because I think people kind of get it, but let's give some very firm examples. What exactly people should know this. So what exactly does structural sexism actually mean when it comes to workplaces?
So it can mean a lot of things, right? But one of the things, for example, is that when women do act ambitious or aggressive at work, what we think they should be doing to get ahead, they're actually penalized for it by both men and women managers and coworkers. No one wants to work with them. No one wants to hire them or help them get ahead when they act as aggressive as men. There's also studies that among the most ambitious employees, when they use the same tactics to get ahead, men are twice as likely to actually advance as compared to women. There's also particular levels of discrimination that go on. For example, mothers in the workplace are overwhelmingly seen as less competent, as less committed, basically as less good at their jobs, whereas when a man becomes a father in the workplace, his pay rises, his esteem rises. So there's this sense that women are just not as good as men at work, and I don't think that it's usually overt, and I don't think most people think that they're doing this, but it's subtle and pervasive, and it's through lots of little actions. It's through the ways that men and women are treated differently in meetings. It's the way that they're treated differently in their evaluations and recommendations. We see different language show up. We see different critiques being made. It's just a different world still. We have moved past the days when help wanted ads were divided between men and women could only apply for certain jobs, but we have not moved past our implicit biases against women in the workplace.
Yeah, and you write about in the piece how it's just a lot of the very terminology, and you kind of mentioned this, where it's like if a woman is ambitious, she's looked upon as being bossy or pushy, but a man who's ambitious, he's assertive or a go-getter, essentially.
Exactly. You do analysis of the words that people use around women and men, and they're just completely different. They're in different worlds. An aggressive woman is abrasive, and an aggressive man is assertive. And, this is not something that people necessarily know they are doing, but it is still happening.